Hi, my name's Rupert, and today I'm talking about CEO fraud, which is the name we give to spurious emails sent to people within your organisation purporting to be from the boss. So CEO fraud is an evolution of phishing emails. The oldest example of which I can think of is the Nigerian prince who still can't give his money away to somebody by providing their bank details, despite the fact he's been trying since the 1990s. Spear phishing is the name we give to when a specific individual or company is targeted. And whaling's the phrase that for emails specifically directed at senior executives, CEOs, managing and financial directors, and so on. And there's another video in this cybersecurity awareness series, the link to which is on the screen at the moment, specifically discussing phishing and giving examples of what you should be looking for. So, focusing on CEO fraud, email from the biggest whale within your organisation. So let's start by reviewing briefly why the CEO, the boss, the managing director is such a good target to impersonate. Firstly, it goes without saying, they've got a lot of positional role power within the business. They're likely to be the people responsible for the ultimate decision over implementing change, and therefore communicating that change to you is likely to be less suspicious. They're also likely to hold the keys to the kingdom from a financial perspective, purchasing authority, financial control within the business. They're the people that make the big decisions, even if they're not the people that actually initiate the transactions themselves. And lastly, they're likely to be responsible for making big announcements, company-wide announcements within the business. So to receive an email announcing a big change or introducing something that you haven't heard about before, it's quite likely to come from them. Ultimately, when we receive emails from our bosses, typically we just want the boss to be happy. So if they're asking us to do something, we're likely to want to do it for them, to help out, and ultimately to protect ourselves and our jobs. So there's an inherent amount of an inherent assumption that an email sent from the boss is going to be actioned. I'm using the phrase CEO here, but ultimately it's not just CEOs. C-suites, the executives within a business, finance departments, managers, and when I'm talking about smaller departments, smaller companies even, it could just be your managing director, even in a small team of 3 or 4 people. Just because you haven't got a CEO in title doesn't mean you haven't got a boss, a decision maker, maybe even a line manager that you report to, all of whom are targets potentially for mimicking CEO fraud. So there's lots of things to be aware of when you're looking at emails, and I've just highlighted a few here. So areas to pay attention to when you receive an email. Pay attention to signatures. If you have a standardized company signature, be aware that it could be copied, but also be very suspicious if you receive an email from a colleague, from the CEO, from your boss, that has an unusual signature. Always worth a look. Sent from my iPhone, for example, if that's not what happens when your boss normally sends you an email, there's a good chance it's not from them. Display names can be forged. When you're creating an email account, you can type in anything you want, but things to look for are spelling mistakes or format changes. If they normally call themselves Steve and it comes from Stephen, but just be aware of that sort of thing. Email addresses are often not displayed in full when you are looking through your email or through your mailbox, specifically if you're on a mobile or even just in the preview pane of a message. So you need to be careful about email addresses, but if you are looking in detail, you're looking specifically for any change of email address or change of extension, a .com to a .co.uk, for example, anything that seems a bit out of the ordinary for that particular sender. Phishing emails will often have an urgent request element to them. The urgency, again, combined with your desire to help, increases the likelihood of you overlooking the details or the mistakes potentially in an email. And just be aware that people will often use an urgent emotional justification to do something. You're really helping them out if you can push this request through. Emails that ask you to bypass procedures, just this once, or I'll sort it out for you later, should always be taken or considered suspicious. It's very natural language to use. You're helping somebody out again. And also another thing to be aware of, if somebody within your organisation sends you something, you shouldn't normally need to kind of log in again or log into a new site or service. to action that. Even if the boss is sending you a file, he should have put it on the server or the SharePoint environment. However you normally share files internally, this file should be no different in most cases. So just be suspicious based on the type of content that you receive. So on the screen I've got an example of CEO fraud. This was one that we made up within our business. Our boss is Steve Cole, Managing Director of NetPrimates. And on the screen you can see an email sent to NetPrimates accounts asking suspiciously for a payment to be made. The message reads, "Can you please pay the attached supplier invoice urgently so that the goods ship today, as I need them in the data center tomorrow. I can't make payment myself as I'm in the hotel and don't have access to the bank account. Here's the back details, and I'll sort out any paperwork that you need when I get back. Thanks, Steve. Sent from my iPhone." So that's an example of a phishing email. Areas worth highlighting in no particular order. Unusual signature. Normally when Steve sends an email, it would come from the standard NetPrimates signature would be applied by our system, not anything that he has to do on a per device basis. So it's unusual for an email from Steve to say sent from my iPhone. You see at the top there's urgency about it. This is, we're going to let somebody down. There's an urgent need for this payment to go through. There's a justification. Why hasn't Steve done it himself? He's got a problem with his internet banking or whatever, being on the hotel network. He's provided financial details. No, there's no invoice or anything. This is just please pay this account. And an acknowledgement that there is a procedure, but it's all clear for the boss. Just bypass it on this occasion and he will sort out any paperwork you need when he gets back, when he's not quite so busy. So there's 5 areas of concern, basically, of things to be aware of, worth looking out for. So when this email came into the system, it looked suspicious, it looked wrong. And in fact, if you delve a little bit deeper, you notice that the email, the from address at the top, is not actually steve@netprimates.com. It's from a different domain, netprimates. And you notice on the screen, I've spelt them out individually, so you can see just how close an R and an M look like being an M in the middle of a domain name. This is referred to as domain mimicking, and it's something we've seen in the wild. It costs so little to set up a domain name these days, and hackers can absolutely take advantage of this. So you've really got to be careful about the sort of thing that we're looking for. This email originated from outside of our domain, there was no breach of security. It was just they went and registered a domain, $10, no problem, and were able to impersonate, set it up using the user account Steve Cole to mimic our boss. So there we go, that's an example. So solutions to this sort of problem. Ultimately, on this occasion, there's a significant human element to it. Computers don't really click on phishing emails much. It's the human element, people that are doing it. So we're going to have to start with the soft skill side of things, and we always start with training, user awareness training. Make sure people know what phishing emails are, what their intent is, and ultimately that they know what normal looks like, and so they can monitor that sort of thing if anything suspicious comes in. We need to make sure as an organisation we've got the right policies in place, procurement policies, invoice payment policies, communication policies. What is normal? How do we act? If people don't know how we normally process things, then they won't know what abnormal is, what these strange requests are that are coming in. And ultimately, from a cultural point of view as well, we need to have a no blame policy, a no fault policy. If in doubt, stop and report it. Yes, once in a blue moon, it might mean that a legitimate request gets delayed, but if it's delayed in the interest of the company to make sure that the procedures and so on are followed, then that's ultimately a good thing. We've had some phenomenal successes with NetPrimates customers over the years, whereby people stopping, thinking things are suspicious, picking up the phone and calling their boss, for example, something as simple as that. Did you really send me that email? It was an unusual request. Have absolutely saved the day without any technical kind of intervention at that point. So people are always your first line of defense against phishing. There are technical things we can do as well as an IT industry, making sure that your email services are set up properly with what I refer to as modern email security. So it's no longer just a username and a password. We need to make sure we're taking advantage of the compliance options there. DMARC and SPF, I don't expect everybody to understand what they are, but basically they're technical standards associated with a domain name that govern which servers can and can't send email on your behalf. Emails should be scanned and link protection built in and so on. So if there's a link in the email, in the phishing email, the service might well be blocking access to that based on reputation, based on somebody else having experienced a security incident, having clicked on a similar link in the past, designed to protect everybody. Your email should have access restricted to it, and also its usage should be monitored again so that we know that nobody's in any mailboxes they shouldn't have access to. And ultimately, these days we can add end user notifications. So an example of which is when somebody outside of our domain sends an email into our domain with a display name that matches one of our members of staff, we actually append a banner, or the red part of the screen there, a message at the top of the email saying, this looks suspicious. We haven't blocked the message, but this looks suspicious. And then the example on the screen, I was sending an email in that had come to me personally, and I was sending it back into the company, forwarding it through. So there are cases where it's perfectly legitimate, but this was just a warning. And this says it's from Rupert, but it's not actually from Rupert@netprimates.com. So just beware of it. So that's examples of technical things that we can do to protect a company from CEO fraud. So ultimately, please take action. Here's some takeaway tips for you. First and foremost, if you're able to implement and pay attention to the security warnings, make sure your team know what they're expecting to see. Security awareness training, discuss phishing. What does it look like? What does legitimate email look like internally? Why does phishing exist? What is and isn't acceptable for it to be asked via email? And how do people report suspicious email and verify legitimate requests? It might just be as simple as, if you're spending more than £100, pick up the phone and verify it with somebody before sending that payment through. Consider implementing routine phishing testing and training. We can automate sending a phishing email once a month, once a quarter to everybody on your team at a random time, so they don't all turn up at once at the same time. And see who clicks on them, see who falls for them. They can look different each time. That sort of thing really empowers people. And if they click on the link and perhaps they shouldn't have done, it can automatically show them a training video explaining where they may have gone wrong, and hopefully improving their education for next time. And lastly, implement procurement processes and stick to them. And don't forget that no fault blame. If you stick to the process, if you follow the process, even if the boss doesn't get his order processed in time or whatever, it's the process that needs fixing, not the person. So there's some actions to take away. So this was a really quick rundown of CEO fraud, the type of things you're likely to see, and some examples of what we've actually seen in the wild over the last couple of years. I really hope you found it useful. Please do share it with anyone else you know who you think may benefit from it. You can subscribe to the other tips and tricks in this in our cybersecurity awareness series at the website below, www.netprimates.com/tips. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.